World leaders, some of them, are gathering for the COP29 Climate Change Summit in Azerbaijan and confronting a new era of uncertainty, of course, following the election of Donald Trump.
Because, of course, the president-elect has vowed to walk away from a global agreement on cutting emissions for a second time. He's repeatedly called climate change a hoax. Well, we're joined by the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband now. Good morning, Mr Miliband. Look, if half the leaders of the world aren't there, and if America doesn't get on board, because we all know that Donald Trump gets what Donald Trump wants, you're in real difficulties, aren't you, with this?
Well, look, Richard, it would be wrong to say that people, haven't noticed the US election, the election of President Trump. But the thing I find here at this summit is a real determination to get on with the job. And the reason I'm here and the reason the Prime Minister is here is in our national self-interest to be doing this. It's in our national self-interest for good jobs. And you've got a big announcement from Scottish Power today about investing in 1,300 blade manufacturing jobs in Hull. That shows the clean energy transition can produce jobs. And it's in our national self-interest to work with other countries to tackle the climate crisis, because we are 1% of global emissions. We need the countries that are the other 99% of global emissions to act. Now, of course, what America does matters, but my overwhelming sense is businesses are getting on with it because they see the opportunities. Other countries are getting on with it because they also see the opportunities and the responsibility.
But obviously pursuing these policies is extremely expensive. And if America isn't on board, that's going to encourage other countries to say, well, if America's not doing it, then we won't either.
Well, just on it being expensive, I mean, the key thing for Britain is that by going towards clean power by 2030, the government's commitment, we now have independent affirmation from the National Energy System Operator that can not only increase our energy security, but can lower the costs of electricity. You see, if we'd been having this conversation 15 years ago, Richard, we'd have been saying, well, renewables are much more an expensive option, but they're right in the long term for climate and other reasons. Today, the reality is, and not just for Britain, for other countries as well, is that actually renewables are cheaper than fossil fuels. So whether it's solar or wind, this is actually the way forward economically as well as ethically. That's why I think the transition is unstoppable, because it's in our economic interests as well as the economic interests of other countries to act.
But those alternative technologies which you just listed, you talk about being unstoppable, they're sometimes unstartable. If you look at the weather that we've had in the UK, I don't know how long you've been out there for, but for the last 2 weeks, until yesterday actually, we had virtually no wind, and we had virtually, in fact, no sunshine at all. So the windmills wouldn't be spinning and the solar cells wouldn't be discharging electricity. 2 weeks that went on for. You do need backup, don't you? You do need gas-powered stations or maybe nuclear stations. You can't go completely green.
Here's the answer to that, Richard, and basically you're right. Renewables are the backbone of the system, and increasingly you can store renewable power through battery technology and what they call long-duration storage. But you're absolutely right, too, that nuclear is part of the system, and decarbonised gas supplies are also part of the system. One really exciting announcement that this government has already made, and we've hit the ground running on this agenda, is carbon capture and storage. So you have a gas-fired power station, but instead of the carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere, it gets captured. And with BP, we're working Net Zero Teesside on a plant to do just that. So you're absolutely right. You need the whole mix. I always say this. You need all of the mix of technologies, but renewables can be the absolute backbone of the system.
Mr Miliband, you've introduced Great British Energy Bill and pledged to cut bills by £300 on average. When's that going to happen?
That's we set that out for 2030. It was an independent set of modelling that said that bills could go down by up to £300. And what's important, Susanna, is that the report I referred to last week from the Energy System Operator confirms that not only is our target achievable, but it will lead to lower costs of electricity. And this is really, really important. It is the big change that I was talking to Richard about. It's a change that renewables are now cheaper than fossil fuels. And what's crucial also is it's not just cheaper, but it gives us more security.
Okay,
because what we saw when Russia invaded Ukraine was prices going through the roof.
Yes.
And that is what cheap, clean renewables avoid happening.
OK, so in 6 years' time, our bills will go down by £300. How much are they going to have gone up by that point?
Well, it's not about bills going up as a result of our plans. The truth is, Susanna, is that because we don't control fossil fuel markets, so when geopolitical events happen, what happens is that, you know, for example, Russia invading Ukraine, prices go up, and then not just for imported gas, but for North Sea, let me just finish the point, North Sea gas as well. So what we're doing is transitioning to cheap, clean power that we control. You see, we set the prices, for example, of offshore wind 15 years ahead. That's the contracts that we set out. So we're moving from a system we don't control to cheap, clean, homegrown power. I can't make guarantees about what's going to happen to the gas price next quarter, obviously.
No, but except the Institute for Fiscal Studies says that actually bills are going to go up in the next 5 years, up until that point where apparently our bills are going to come down eventually, because of green energy levies. This is the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Says that we all are going to face a £120 increase in household bills because of environmental taxes and higher prices for consumers.
Well, look, I haven't seen that particular report, but when you look in the round, and I'd suggest you look at the NESO report from last week, because they're the Independent National Energy System Operator, what they say is that our plans lead to cheaper costs of electricity, because the truth is that renewables just offer a cheaper way forward than fossil fuels. So when you look at it in the round, which is what they do, they say it leads to lower costs, not higher costs.
Okay,
and that is the big change. And it's not just lower costs, it gives you security from those huge price spikes which hit all of your viewers and indeed businesses across the country. We're trying to get away from those price spikes which have hit people so badly.
OK, I'll tell you one cut that people have definitely felt, and that is the cut in the winter fuel allowance that is affecting pensioners. And we've heard today from a charity, Marie Curie charity, researchers said that those in the last year of life experienced increased rates of fuel poverty, not having adequate income to heat their homes to a reasonable temperature. We spoke to one individual, Helen Van Buren. She has been given 6 to 8 months to live. That was back actually in 2014, but she is living now in poverty, doesn't receive winter fuel allowance, says she's dying of cancer and cold, doesn't know which will get her first, and has this message for the government.
Because I have such a small income that to keep myself warm, I would need to spend an awful lot. I can't live a normal life anymore. I'm trapped. Come and spend a day with me in the middle of winter with no heat and see how you feel.
Do you have regrets about removing winter fuel allowance?
Well, I'm incredibly sympathetic to your viewer that we just heard from, and that's why the government is taking action to increase the basic state pension, which is so important. That is the foundation of dignity in retirement, to make sure that people are getting the pension credit, to expand the household support fund so there can be help for particular people in difficulty like your viewer. And that's why we're also working with the energy companies to make sure that they can offer help to people in difficulty. Now, obviously, on the winter fuel allowance, that was a difficult decision that we made as a result of the inheritance we had when we came in and the black hole from the previous government. But we want to absolutely maximise the help for people. We're also announced plans to improve home energy insulation for people. So we're taking a range of measures to help those in the greatest need.
All right, Mr. Miller, we'd like to press you more on that, but we're almost out of satellite time. We want to squeeze in one more question quickly before we go. Do you think that the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, should resign based on the revelations which have emerged in the last few days?
Richard, I think you'll understand why. I'm not going to second-guess decisions that are the Church of England decisions and decisions for Justin Welby. Obviously, the catalogue of abuse that has been uncovered is deeply, deeply disturbing, but the Church of England makes its own decisions on these matters, and I think it's right that I, as a politician, don't intervene in those.
But then, as an individual, you must have an opinion. This isn't actually a political issue, is it? It's nothing to do with direct politics. So could you give us a personal opinion?
My personal opinion is that the catalogue of abuse is horrifying and appalling, but I'm a government minister, and I don't think it's my job, and I'm not going to second-guess decisions for the Church of England.
All right, well, good luck at COP29. Thanks for joining us this morning.